Imagine waking up one morning to find that new legislation allows law enforcement to enter your home without a warrant, all to inspect your firearms. For responsible gun owners, this scenario isn't just hypothetical. It feels like a direct intrusion into your personal safety, your home, and your constitutional rights. The very freedoms that many of us rely on for self-protection could suddenly feel uncertain. How would you respond if your private sanctuary could be accessed at any moment without your consent? Here's the question. Do you believe this law is a necessary safety measure, or does it cross the line into government overreach? Share your answer in the comments below. This bill, officially referred to as SF 4290, proposes unprecedented access for law enforcement officers, effectively bypassing the traditional requirement of a judicially authorized warrant. In my legal analysis, this intersects directly with the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms and the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. The Second Amendment has historically been interpreted to protect an individual's right to own firearms as a safeguard against tyranny, while the Fourth Amendment ensures that government intrusion into private homes requires probable cause and oversight by an impartial judge. Courts would likely examine whether the government's interest in public safety justifies this level of intrusion. Historically, firearm inspections and home entries without consent have been controversial. Prior cases, such as Florida v. Jardines and Carpenter v. United States, highlight the court's careful attention to privacy expectations within one's home. The Supreme Court has consistently emphasized that homes enjoy the highest degree of constitutional protection. In my legal opinion, any law permitting warrantless home inspections for guns must overcome a high threshold to withstand judicial scrutiny. From a federal versus state perspective, firearm regulations differ significantly. Some states already implement firearm registration or inspection requirements, but these typically require either consent or judicial approval. SF 4290, if enacted, would override these traditional safeguards, granting police broad discretion to enter private residences. The implications for lawful gun owners are substantial. Even those fully compliant with existing laws could face unexpected inspections, confrontations, or legal challenges. The practical consequences are serious. Consider a law-abiding citizen who stores firearms responsibly and maintains all necessary licenses. Under this bill, that person might still be subject to inspection. Failure to fully comply, even unintentionally, could result in fines, citations, or more severe legal consequences. In my legal analysis, understanding the precise scope and limits of this authority is critical. Documenting compliance, understanding state-specific firearm regulations, and consulting legal counsel are essential precautions. Political supporters of the bill argue that such inspections are vital for public safety, helping to prevent accidents, unauthorized use, or criminal diversion of firearms. Critics, however, highlight the risk of government overreach and erosion of privacy rights. The tension between public safety and constitutional freedoms lies at the heart of this debate. Courts would likely examine whether SF 4290 is narrowly tailored to address a legitimate government interest without unnecessarily infringing upon fundamental rights. Long-term, the enactment of such a law could establish a precedent for expanded government authority over private property and firearm ownership. Law-abiding gun owners would need to adapt to a new legal environment, potentially altering the way they store firearms, maintain documentation, and interact with law enforcement. Civic engagement, informed debate, and legal awareness are crucial for ensuring rights are preserved while public safety objectives are pursued. Now reflect carefully. Does this bill protect the public, or does it compromise individual freedoms in a way that could set a dangerous precedent? Engage thoughtfully in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel for ongoing updates, expert legal breakdowns, and practical guidance for lawful firearm ownership. Being informed, proactive, and responsible is not just a choice. It is essential for safeguarding your rights. Imagine a scenario where a responsible gun owner, let's call him John, lives in a state like Florida or California. He keeps his firearms locked in a secure safe, maintains all required permits, and follows every regulation meticulously. One morning, a knock on the door reveals law enforcement officers claiming they need to inspect his firearms under the provisions of SF 4290. John, although fully compliant, now faces a situation that blurs the line between lawful oversight and constitutional intrusion. How should a citizen respond when compliance alone does not shield them from unexpected inspection? Do you think a law-abiding citizen like John should be compelled to allow such inspections without a warrant? Share your opinion in the comments below. In my legal analysis, the critical factor here is understanding what constitutes lawful authority versus overreach. SF 4290 potentially overrides traditional warrant requirements, meaning officers could enter a private home based solely on the presumption of firearm ownership. Historically, courts have required a reasonable expectation of privacy for any intrusion. The Fourth Amendment protects against searches and seizures, and the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that the home is entitled to the highest protection under the Constitution. Any deviation from this principle could trigger significant legal challenges. Let's examine the federal versus state context. States like Texas or Arizona may have less restrictive firearm regulations, while California and New York enforce strict licensing, registration, and storage laws. SF 4290's provisions, if enacted nationally or adapted by individual states, would create a patchwork of enforcement and legal risk. In practical terms, lawful owners in states with traditionally robust firearm protections may suddenly find themselves exposed to inspections they never anticipated. This raises questions about the balance between state sovereignty and federal oversight. The real-world impact is profound. Consider a homeowner who works night shifts and has family sleeping during inspections. Warrantless entries could disrupt daily life, create confrontations, and expose families to unnecessary stress. From a legal perspective, documenting every firearm, maintaining permits, and understanding local regulations becomes paramount. In my legal opinion, proactive compliance and consultation with legal counsel are the most effective tools for minimizing risk. Analyzing the bill through a constitutional lens, the Second Amendment grants the right to bear arms, while the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable intrusion. SF 4290's warrantless inspection clauses challenge both protections simultaneously. Courts would likely examine whether these inspections are narrowly tailored to serve public safety without excessively infringing individual rights. There is a strong constitutional argument that such blanket authority could face significant judicial scrutiny if challenged. Supporters argue that inspections prevent firearms from being misused or illegally transferred. Critics contend that even law-abiding owners are subjected to invasive government scrutiny, undermining the trust between citizens and law enforcement. The practical question is whether the potential safety benefits justify the legal and emotional costs imposed on private citizens. In my legal analysis, the bill's broad application may prove controversial and invite numerous court challenges. Long-term, the passage of SF 4290 could set a precedent for further expansions of governmental authority. If officers can enter homes without warrants for firearms, could similar laws be enacted for other personal property under the guise of public safety? Responsible gun owners must remain vigilant, stay informed, and understand how each provision affects their daily lives. Maintaining meticulous records, securing firearms, and staying current on state-specific law updates is essential for minimizing risk. As you reflect on this scenario, ask yourself, does public safety truly justify potential intrusions into every law-abiding citizen's home, or does this cross a dangerous line? Engage in the comments below with your thoughts. The conversation is crucial for fostering awareness and encouraging responsible civic participation. Even for law-abiding citizens, understanding the practical steps to remain compliant under SF 4290 is critical. The first and most important step is awareness. Knowing the exact language of the law, the triggers for police inspections, and the scope of their authority can prevent misunderstandings that might escalate into legal complications. Ignorance is never a defense in legal matters, so staying informed through official state publications, attorney consultations, and verified news sources is essential. Securing firearms properly is the second layer of protection. Gun safes, trigger locks, and careful record-keeping are not just best practices. They demonstrate responsibility and may mitigate scrutiny during any inspection. In my legal analysis, visible, documented compliance provides both a physical and legal shield. Officers conducting an inspection will have less ground for suspicion when the homeowner can immediately show all firearms are registered, stored securely, and accounted for according to local and federal law. Knowing your rights during a warrantless inspection is paramount. SF 4290 proposes allowing entry without traditional judicial authorization, but the law may still impose procedural constraints. For example, officers might be required to announce themselves, identify the purpose of the inspection, and provide documentation referencing the statute. In my legal opinion, understanding these procedural details allows homeowners to calmly assert their rights while maintaining compliance, reducing the risk of conflict. Consider also the practical documentation of your firearms. Keeping an inventory, copies of purchase receipts, and registration certificates in a secure, accessible location ensures you can produce verification immediately. Courts would likely examine whether any refusal or delay in producing documentation constitutes obstruction, even if the firearms are legally owned. Proactive preparation reduces legal exposure and signals responsible ownership. Understanding state-specific nuances is equally important. While SF 4290 provides a framework, local laws may impose additional requirements or limitations. For example, states may specify the times when inspections can occur, the officers authorized to conduct them, and penalties for non-compliance. In my legal analysis, knowing these details allows citizens to comply fully while asserting any rights preserved under the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. Failure to comply can carry legal risks, even for law-abiding owners. Non-compliance may result in fines, temporary confiscation, or additional inspections. While SF 4290 targets firearm safety, it also exposes citizens to potential disputes if officers perceive resistance. In such cases, remaining calm, documenting the interaction, and seeking immediate legal counsel are critical strategies. There is a strong constitutional argument that overreach beyond the statute's text could be challenged, but only courts can definitively resolve disputes. Supporters of SF 4290 argue it's a necessary tool for public safety, citing cases where illegal firearms caused harm or were improperly stored. Opponents counter that the law infringes on privacy and autonomy, creating a slippery slope for future regulatory overreach. In practice, gun owners must navigate this tension by being fully compliant yet mindful of potential overreach, ensuring both legal safety and personal security. Politically, SF 4290's passage reflects a growing emphasis on regulatory oversight in firearm ownership. Homeowners should monitor legislative developments, understand amendments, and anticipate changes in enforcement priorities. In my legal analysis, staying ahead of policy shifts allows citizens to avoid surprises and maintain responsible ownership. Long-term, adapting to these regulations is not just a matter of compliance, but of preserving the constitutional balance between public safety and individual rights. Ultimately, the law places responsibility squarely on the citizen while granting broad discretion to enforcement. Educating yourself, documenting all firearms, and understanding procedural requirements creates a robust legal defense. Courts would likely evaluate whether inspections are conducted fairly and within statutory boundaries, and having a record of compliance strengthens your position significantly. As you consider these measures, reflect on this. Is it enough to simply comply, or should citizens advocate for clearer boundaries to protect constitutional rights? Share your thoughts in the comments. Discussing these issues helps build awareness and promotes responsible, informed gun ownership. Across the country, real-life encounters highlight the tension between lawful gun ownership and police authority. In several documented cases, law-abiding citizens were visited after new firearm regulations took effect. These encounters often involved inspections without warrants or prior notice, leaving homeowners confused and anxious. In my legal analysis, these cases demonstrate the delicate balance courts must consider, protecting individual rights while upholding public safety. Observing these real-world events underscores the importance of preparedness and knowledge of the law. Supreme Court precedent provides a lens through which these situations are evaluated. Decisions such as Katz v. United States and Florida v. Jardines emphasize that searches of private property implicate strong Fourth Amendment protections. Courts consistently weigh whether government actions respect privacy while pursuing legitimate regulatory objectives. There is a strong constitutional argument that warrantless entry, even under SF 4290, could face challenges if procedural safeguards are ignored or if officers exceed their authority. Consider practical scenarios. A homeowner receives a notice of inspection under SF 4290. They have fully registered firearms, properly stored in a secure safe, and maintain meticulous documentation. During the inspection, officers ask to enter and verify compliance. In this case, cooperation combined with documented compliance minimizes the risk of escalation. Conversely, even minor misunderstandings, like unclear paperwork or delayed response, can create complications. Courts would likely examine intent, compliance, and transparency, highlighting why preparation is crucial. From a political perspective, SF 4290 reflects a broader trend toward regulatory oversight. Supporters argue it ensures responsible ownership prevents illegal access, and enhances public safety. Critics contend that it erodes privacy, increases governmental reach, and may lead to potential abuses if boundaries are not clearly defined. In my legal analysis, awareness of both viewpoints equips citizens to comply responsibly while advocating for clarity and fairness in enforcement. Long-term implications are significant. Homeowners who integrate compliance into daily routines, keeping records updated, understanding the law's scope, and knowing their constitutional protections, are better positioned to navigate inspections without incident. Awareness, careful preparation, and legal understanding collectively reduce risk and empower citizens to maintain both their rights and safety. As you reflect on these issues, ask yourself, are current laws striking the right balance between safety and privacy? How should responsible gun owners prepare for future regulations without compromising their rights? Share your answers in the comments below, because thoughtful discussion helps spread awareness and promotes lawful, informed citizenship. Staying informed and proactive is not just about avoiding penalties, it's about being an educated, responsible gun owner. Regularly reviewing your state and federal legal obligations, consulting attorneys when necessary, and documenting every firearm are actions that create a strong legal foundation. In my professional opinion, this approach ensures that inspections, if conducted, remain compliant with the law while protecting your rights. Remember, knowledge is power. Understanding SF 4290, the limits of police authority, and your responsibilities as a firearm owner allows you to respond calmly, legally, and effectively. Responsible citizens who are prepared set an example, demonstrating that law-abiding gun ownership can coexist with public safety initiatives. As regulations evolve, staying proactive, informed, and respectful of the law is the best protection available. So, take a moment to reflect. How would you handle a warrantless inspection under SF 4290? Would you feel confident or unprepared? Share your thoughts in the comments. Engaging in civil discussion strengthens awareness and ensures that responsible gun owners know their rights while navigating a changing legal landscape. Stay informed, stay lawful, and stay safe.